live? Yeah. All right. Well, we can get started. We would like to acknowledge that this land we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Roll call. I've had an apology from Councillor Shanks. Councillor Solomon came in with us, but okay, well, he'll be here again in a second. Are there any motions to grant leave of absence? If not, no leaves of absence and no non-attendance. Public open forum. If we don't have any public open forum, we'll move on to declarations of interest. There's no declarations of interest. We'll move on to confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting, the June meeting. Do we have a mover for the minutes? Councillor Hennessy and Councillor Hughes, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Business arising from the minutes. Does anyone have anything to bring up? If not, we'll go on to decision reports. 7.1 Gawler East, we're going to have a presentation from Wellco, if you'd like to come up to the podium over there and turn on the microphone.
Hello. Beautiful. Firstly, thank you for this opportunity, Honourable Mayor, councillors, staff and other members. Really like this opportunity just to talk a bit about our special project. I'll only talk a little bit, then I'll hand over to my more learned colleagues. My name's Guy Williamson, National Development Director of Wellco. Our South Australian team consists of Michael and Daniel. I might move on to the next slide, which we'll work out. Where's that one? Beautiful, we've done this before.
There we go.
Thank you for your assistance. Beautiful. So I'll talk a little bit about ourselves and then a bit about our project. The Wellco experience, we have across the country, it's a private company. We have 20 projects, all in various stages of development, some going through planning, some finishing and some under construction. Some of those projects are commercial, industrial and retail, but predominantly we're a land developer. Currently in 3 states, we go where the business is, and I'd like to tell you that we love being in South Australia, particularly Gawler, but we've really enjoyed our experience over the last 2 years being in South Australia. In our first year, we managed to sell 200 lots. Obviously, the market's dropped off a little bit, but we're looking forward to seeing all the immigration turn into new people coming to South Australia and being part of that journey. So geographically, we've got a very big spread, only 17 staff, so we're pretty thin on the ground, but we like a challenge. A bit about our approach. What we like to do is build relationships. That's part of the reason why we're very excited about coming tonight. We like to get on the ground, we like to talk to stakeholders, and we like to get involved, particularly in sporting clubs and community groups. One of the things we love the most about that is we love a challenge, and we love seeing young people accept a challenge, be part of sporting clubs and get that learning from teamwork and challenges and seeing them grow into the future. That's probably enough from me. I'm going to pass on to Daniel, who's going to tell you a bit more about the project itself.
Thank you, mate. The next slide. So Springwood, just for a bit of context, you can see that our northern governing boundary is Carlton Road at the top of the screen there, and to the western boundary is Cheek Avenue, and then all the way to the eastern boundary is Balmoral Drive. So that's Springwood. The Gawler East Link Road obviously goes through it as well. You can see in the map there, and then links up back to Carlton Road again. So just a bit of context for you. Yeah, just for reference, that is an interactive master plan that can be found on our website. So you're more than welcome to jump on there and have a play around with it. Gives us live updates on how we're tracking on site and available lots, etc. So more than welcome to jump on there if you want to. So Springwood, we're looking to be around 2,000 lots by the end of the project. We currently have about 20 to 25% of the project already established to the eastern wing that you can see there. We have a centralised commercial precinct in the middle, which I'm sure you're all very familiar of, which includes Springwood Place, which I might add has been booming recently. So it's been great to see. With that fully tenanted, it unlocks some more opportunities, which Michael will touch on further down this presentation. Throughout the project, we're looking to deliver over 35% open space, and with that comes an array of nature walks and community parks and sporting ovals throughout the project, which we're extremely excited to deliver in the future. So leads me on to our approvals for SCAP and our DA. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So last year, Wellco lodged a variation to the previous 2020 SCAP approval. The reason for doing so was for Wellco jumping into the project, we identified a number of ways to better the existing master plan and the precincts within. That was purely because we understood and recognised the land that we're dealing with. And when I say better our engineering, it's more with regards to working with the land, minimising our impact on native vegetation, and also minimising our retaining on site. So just overall creating a better platform and a better base to work with, which the previous approval didn't really pick up on. So in lodging our new application, our variation to the application, we split the precincts. We split the project up into 3 precincts. Obviously, the Quarry precinct you can see to your north there has been approved, which is fantastic. And we're extremely excited about that. We are in the midst of finalising, hopefully, the Highfield precinct, and the South of Creek precinct is currently under negotiation with SCAP, and we're working through that quite thoroughly with them, which has been great. So that's the update on the SCAP approval. If we go to the next slide, please. So just a quick construction update as to where we're at. So stage 3 is coming towards the end of completion there. We've just had hot mix put down. Lots are getting topsoiled. We've got street lights in, and it's starting to come together and look quite presentable. In conjunction with stage 3, we've obviously got the Gawler East Link Road intersection, which we are in the midst of doing at the moment. This is all meant to wrap up around September, so we're expecting titles in September. You can see there stage 4, where you will be able to see the bulk earthworks to the eastern side of that photo. is currently undergoing, and we're putting up retaining walls and smashing through that as quickly as possible too. So happy with progress on that front. We're currently tendering stages 5, 6 and 7 and the quarry as a bulk earthworks remediation sort of package, which Michael's going to touch on very shortly. And also the civil works are currently being tendered at the moment too. We are currently, so we've got quite a bit with council at the moment. So I'm glad we're able to get in front of you guys. So stages 5, 6 and 7, which you can see by that image there, just south of the link road, are currently in with your team at the moment. We're working through that quite closely with them, which has been great. We also have stage 8 and 9, which is to the western boundary and to the north as well, in with council for engineering approvals. So we're all extremely busy at the moment, but yeah, I've appreciated everyone's help on that to date. So I think that might conclude my segment. So thank you, and I'll pass on to Michael.
Thanks, Dan. So I guess one of the big challenges with this site is obviously there was a pre-existing quarry across the site. You can see, Guy, I might just need to go back one slide. It's probably easy for me to explain. So the existing quarry sat across stages 5, 6 and 7, and also where our future oval and future school sits, that sort of pink shaded area. It also sits in stages 3 and 4, which sit to the east here. So the first stage of the quarry remediation exercise has already been undertaken. And the next stage, which will start later this year, we will be doing the earthworks across 5, 6 and 7. And we'll also be starting to fill the old quarry. If you guys are familiar with the site, there's a substantial amount of filling exercise to go in there in order to be able to develop out what may be a school in the future, and also that public open space and where that oval sits. Sorry, Guy, do you want to jump on to the next slide? So obviously, as you can see, this is obviously very high level sort of concept design at the moment of what that public open space might look like. We have worked through what the design levels will be. So we're working through that at the moment, and we'll probably do a more detailed concept over the next 12 to 18 months. And the delivery of that open space is several years away still. The reason for that is there's a lot of fuel that we'll be winning from the site, in the future stages, and that'll be utilised to fill up that quarry more substantially. So we're keeping that area there so we can place that fuel on site. And obviously there's a proposed school site. So Henry and I have been tic-tacking a little bit to work through if there are suitors. We're sort of in the early phases of that. We've only sort of started that in the last couple of months. So we'll keep working together, hopefully finding someone who is interested in the site. And yeah, we'll keep you guys updated on how that progresses. So Dan touched on, we've got a lot in design at the moment, a lot of construction activity. The next sort of phase is the precinct, Highfields precinct, which we're about to get planning approval for. That stages 10 to 12. We've also started to do detailed design on this as well, or undertake detailed design. There's 136 lots in this precinct. I guess we took our time to get this through planning, really working with council on resolutions and also with the Native Veg Council. I guess this was an opportunity that we saw to maintain as much native veg as possible through here. We substantially increased the amount that we are maintaining compared to the original master plan. And you can see the pockets of green where all of that before, I believe, was pretty much cleared. So we're now maintaining that. So hopefully that will assist everyone in this room. And then in terms of south of the creek, in stage 14, we've got a creek crossing. So we're starting detailed design on that at the moment to access the southern portion of the land. So the commercial precinct, I guess you guys are familiar with where the Drakes are at the moment, and the rest of the commercial precinct. There's obviously a childcare centre. There's a Springwood Place, which is fully occupied at the moment. So there's now opportunities to bring on some more retail offerings. So if you want to just go to the next slide. We've got a couple of lots which are out on EOI at the moment, which is being run by Leadwell. I'm sure you guys have seen billboards up on site if you've driven past recently. I guess the lot on the corner opposite where the service station is, that, you know, like I said, it's early days of the EOI campaign at the moment. We're anticipating that to be some form of quick service retail or large format retail. And then lot B, which sits right behind the service station, that's also designated for large format retail too. I guess in the coming months, as that EOI sort of evolves, we'll be able to report back on who the interested parties are, and maybe sometime later this year or next year, there'll be some planning applications lodged for that, as we sort of understand what that tenant interest looks like. These are just a couple of renders, just really preliminary renders without actually having any tenants on them. So they're very high level at the moment. You can see on lot A, which is that one closest to us, there's just a large format retail building. And then in behind this, the service station, you can see at the moment there's got like some sort of spanner or something on it. So we're indicating there's some sort of like subsidiary use to that service station. Next slide, thanks. And that's just another close-up render. So I guess the performance in the market at the moment, if you just jump to the next slide, I guess you'll see on this graph here, there was a pretty big dip in sales through January, February. We have since picked up. I mean, that January, February dip was nothing to do with our project. That was across the board, across the state, in some part, and probably across the country as well. In fact, South Australia has probably been the most resilient market across the country. You know, there's projects in Victoria and New South Wales. If you know they were getting 6s and 7s and 11s, they, you know, per month, they would be quite happy. So we're outperforming probably the rest of the country in our state at the moment. And Springwood in the northern region is probably performing in maybe the third, you know, in the top 3 or 4 in terms of its monthly sales recently. So there's certainly an appetite for people to be in Gawler. A couple of charts just talking about our buyer profiles. So you can see there that our project is still really heavily weighted to owner occupiers, 84% compared to only 16% investors. I think that's a really good sentiment for the sort of people who do want to live in Gawler. There's still really big appetite for owner occupiers, and obviously our first home buyers are still just a minority. Of the majority, sorry, they're 52%. Probably anticipating, it'll be interesting to see what that graph looks like in the next 6 months on the back of the stamp duty exemptions for first home buyers, but I'm anticipating that might swing over the next 6 months to be more like a 75%, but we'll see what that looks like. Next slide, our plans moving forward. So I guess just probably to summarize what we've sort of covered off on in this presentation, you know, in the coming months, we're looking to get our full scope approvals across the whole master plan. Our planning and engineering approvals, we've been working really closely with David and his team. It's been a fantastic relationship, actually. So stages 5 to 9, we're hoping to get engineering approvals in the coming months. We're hoping we can continue to sell at, you know, that sort of 10 a month over the next 12 months, which will give us, you know, 110 to 120 sort of sales. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of activity happening in around that quarry site, sort of stages 5, 6 and 7, filling the quarry. It's going to be a big earthworks exercise, which will start later this year. It's going to really transform the site as you enter from the west, from Schomberg Drive. You'll start to see, it won't look like this, you know, there won't be a big mound of dirt. There'll be less sort of, you know, brown soil that you're going to see on the forefront as you're driving through that main route. So it's going to really transform the site, as I said. And obviously we're working through tenants for the commercial lots. I think we've got one more slide. I think I joined the business 6 months ago. Probably one of the first things that sort of stood out to me was the relationship that had formed between Wellco and the council. It's probably, I've worked for a few different developers with lots of different councils across this state and also interstate as well. And it's not always, you don't always have the ability to build the relationship that we have with council. So take my hat off to the team at council, and in particular David, who's in the room today, and Daniel, who have formed that relationship. It's been really good, and really good to see that that's happened. I think moving forward, we have been working in such a collaborative manner, and probably the key aspects around that is what we want to achieve with council is making sure we can really deliver a quick program, get quick turnarounds from council and council staff, which I know everyone's trying really hard to do. Probably some of these notes here are really talking about engineering approvals. We, over the last 6 to 12 months, have probably realised that part of the issue with getting some slow turnaround on engineering approvals has been on our end. The quality of documentation has been substandard, so we have made a decision to change our engineering consultants, which should help facilitate your team to also be able to turn around documentation quicker as well. So look, we're just, we're stoked to be working with you guys, and hopefully we can continue in the same manner. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for the presentation. Just hang around there. I think there's some questions, Mayor.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that very impressive presentation. I'd really like to hear a little bit more about your plans for the South of Creek that you've got. You called it South of Creek. So can you expand on what you're planning to do there?
Sorry, just press it again. There you go.
So when we say south of the creek, obviously you can see the creek line, or the green space that meanders through the centre of the site, left to right, if you like. South of the creek is all the land south of that. In terms of what we're planning to do with it, we're planning to deliver a quality residential community. So that's just a continuation of what we're already doing. Obviously the challenges around that site, there's some significant topographical challenges because there is some significant grade through there. We're investigating a lot of time and energy at the moment through the first stage, the first portion of that land, to really develop a retaining and earthworks strategy, a road grading strategy. So we know exactly how we are going to deliver every single lot there. So we're really starting to evolve that as we speak at the moment. We're probably 3 years maybe from actually developing over that side. So we've still got a fair bit of time to work through that. So hopefully that answers your question. No? What more information would you like on it?
I'd really like to see a concept plan. That'd be great. Yeah, a concept plan of what you're planning to do along the creek line. Yeah. And I did talk to Matthew Welsh, and he was really keen to look at tourism opportunities along that creek line. So if that's at all possible, a concept plan would be fantastic. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm looking for.
No, point taken. So I think we can probably do some work on that, and with that in mind, we can probably unpack and evolve what's happening along that creek line if that's a key focus.
Councillor Koch.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. Just looking at the quarry site, I'm no engineer, but from my understanding, I'm just surprised that you're going to put 3 rows of houses between Carlton Road and the edge of the quarry, because that's really, really steep and probably unstable, I imagine. And then also when you're putting houses also on the western side of the easement into the quarry, I'm just wondering how stable that is, because I don't know it intimately, but it looks pretty unstable to me. So that's my first question.
Sure. I guess the stability of that area, we wouldn't be building residential if it wasn't going to be safe. There is a significant amount of geotechnical investigation work that has been undertaken, and we have got geotechnical reports which do back that. So there shouldn't be any concern around that.
There's always been talk of, through the chair, talk of a school in that area. So you were saying that's proposed and you haven't got anybody yet. And you do talk about having an oval there and the picture there of a footy oval. What happens if there's no school? Are you still going to build the oval? And is that another cost to council?
We're looking to deliver the actual oval as a public open space asset, which will get vested to council if there's no school there, regardless. And I guess the intent would be if there was a school, then there'd be an agreement in place where it could be a shared use facility between the school and they might take on some of the maintenance of that as well. But there's obviously, like I said, there's still a lot of work to go. You know, these deals and getting schools into certain locations do take a long time to evolve and crystallise.
Yeah.
Just looking down the southern part of this area where you've got, this says Barossa Council of Viva, you're right up next to Para Woodlands. What's your buffer to Para Woodlands and what's your fire evacuation strategy? Because a lot of these roads, there's only one exit out of some of those bottom ones. There's only one exit, there's not two exits, and you're right next to Para Woodlands, and I would have thought that was a high bushfire risk area.
Sure. This was probably dealt with before my time as part of the original application, but there is actually a fire exit where the words are the Barossa Council. There is actually a fire track to get out. So the Barossa Council in the purple out to the right hand side, there is a fire track which goes through that land there. Everywhere you see there are actually 2 points of exit. If you look on the western side, sort of, you probably can't read the writing there, but it's sort of stage 15 to 27, which does go down into the Barossa Council land. There are 2 points of exit, one which will go across the creek, across the bridge on the western side of the site. And then there's another one that sort of does a sort of S curve and cuts up through to the commercial site.
Woodlands, it's actually Para Woodlands you're talking about there. It's actually Para Woodlands. The other thing, what's your buffer between Para Woodlands and this development?
Dan, you might be able to help on this one, I'm not sure.
I can't recall the exact offset that we've got, but from the bushfire advice that we've received, it has been adequate.
Yeah, if that's something that you have, if you could send it through.
Maybe I might be able to help you out there. If you see where the Para Woodlands is, there's actually a road that is a buffer between the residential dwellings and our boundary.
Driven a lot of times, it's only a very small, it's only a track, and the woodlands actually start there. So I just want some comfort that there's actually a buffer zone between Para Woodlands. Because from my memory, I think there was a buffer zone and the previous developers were building in the buffer zone. And now when I look at it, you're actually building in the buffer zone. So I just would like some clarification there.
No worries, we can come back to you on that.
All right. So the oval, I know it's early days, but is that something that will be, I guess, in consultation with, I don't know, other sporting groups and the council plans and all that kind of, I know, because as major sponsors of Goal Essential, you're probably aware that all of the local sporting clubs are hungry for oval space and that with the women's teams and the junior teams and all this kind of stuff. Is that something you're looking at?
Yeah, we've certainly been liaising closely with council at our regular meetings, and that's certainly on the agenda. But nothing's evolved there yet in detail. So if you guys hear of anyone who's interested, happy to have those conversations.
Right. Councillor White. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you guys for your presentation. Just a couple of questions about the blocks. First of all, does the size of the allotments vary throughout the different stages? And also the blocks that are south of the river along the Gawler East Link Road, will they be front facing blocks onto the Gawler East Link Road?
Sure. So your first question around lot size, yeah, block sizes do vary drastically. Some of the smallest lots are, there's a handful of terrace type lots, maybe, you know, that might be 150 square meters. And I think the biggest are probably over 1,500.
I might just add that the lot typologies are governed by the colour on that master plan, so you can see all the different type of typologies we've got there. So
Second question. Oh, so yeah, so no, there's no direct access off the Gawler East Link Road to residential. Anything that appears like it's fronting actually is within the subdivision, which is to the south. Yep. Correct. Yep.
Councillor Sample.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. A very comprehensive discussions, and do appreciate it. One of the things that has stood out and is a problem still now is the area on Calton Road, which goes into your estate. From there to the corner at the top of the hill is the car problem of people parking on the road. Certainly the establishment are having a good time at the moment for people crossing the lines. When cars are parked there, for them to park, they have to go over the line, and police are regularly picking people up for doing that. Will the houses along from the top road where the quarry is that Councillor Kosh was talking about, well, will they actually come right out exactly to Calton Road the same as they are in the existing area now, or will they be back a bit to give a little bit more parking for people that have got 2 or 3 cars and a family?
So I guess the houses or the lots that we're delivering will front directly onto Calton Road, as you can see. There is certainly setbacks through there. Those lots are bigger lots. They're 16 metre and 18 metre wide lots. So they should be able to have, most of them have double garages, I would suspect, once the purchasers buy them from us. We're seeing that all through the development is the most desirable product is to have double garage. And we do have a minimum setback of, David, is it 5.5 or 6 metres? So therefore you can fit 2 more cars there. So you could fit 4 cars off street.
Councillor Sample.
And one is Councillor Kosh was referring to the road. It's called Somerton Road, which is a fire track that comes off of Allendale Road, and that goes right through all the way to Tiver Road. And it was a proposed road as another link road to get people away from the area. Has there been any discussions at all of upgrading that road so that people can use it for another way of coming in from the valley area or whatever? I'm sure you're aware of Somerton Road, but it was always going to be the way to get people from the Barossa into Adelaide. And Somerton Road actually goes all the way down nearly to Smithfield or to Craigmore. Has there been any thought about or any discussions taking place about Somerton Road?
To be honest, not at this point, no. But happy to have those discussions with council.
Are there any other questions? No, thanks for the presentation.
Thanks, guys.
Sure, we'll continue to hear from you. So let's get to the motion here. Yes, there's also a presentation from Andrew, so.
Thank you. Unlike all my other presentations, I've kept this down to a reasonable length, so hopefully I'll go through this at a reasonable speed. In terms of the briefing, which basically reflects the agenda report, we're talking about the growth within Gawler East, which includes Springwood, but it also includes other parcels of land to the south. How the Gore East separate rate works, because obviously there's a number of new councillors, and even for those councillors who've been here for some time, the separate rate is something which probably requires a little bit of explanation. Planned and funded capital works 23-24. This is the first year council's funded actual interventions within the local area, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Other interventions and trigger points, and I guess the way forward. For those who don't know, here's a potted history of some of the timelines on the project. For those who were here at the time, there's probably a few councillors who were here close to that time. The minister rezoned the area back in about 2010. It was about 400 hectares. The yield expectation was around 3,900 to 4,000 dwellings. Land lease began construction in around 2011. And there's been a number of different owners of the land since. Ultimately, in terms of Springwood at least, that's now Wellco. There's been updates in terms of projections on lot yields. There's been discussions by council on the size of community infrastructure. So we've touched today already on the quarry site, which is where it's imagined a number of the community infrastructure items would be delivered, whether it be ovals, community hubs or other. Can't detach all this from the story of the Gawler East Link Road, which was a substantial state government investment, and that ultimately ended up being in the order of 67-point-something million, of which there was about $8 million from private sector and council. So council's contribution was Potts Road, which is about 2.4 million, and the rest of it is basically funded as allotments are cleared, and council collects that and forwards that to the department. In terms of the separate rate came in mid-2017, so it's operated now for about 6 years. And the road itself was built on or around 2020-21. We've already covered SCAP, so SCAP gave the overall approval for the development at Springwood. And the road itself opened on the 18th of October 2020, so it was pretty close. Over time, the area projections on yields have changed. We've done some recent re-estimation, if you like, of Gawler East, based particularly on what's happened in the south, but also some of the things that have happened in Springwood as well. And we estimate that the most recent projections we have are about 3,300, which was about 2018, 2019. It's now down to about 2,660. There's a range of reasons. One is topography and one is market demand, and they both influence the offer. With respect to the yields, the actual by year of development that's occurred, they have been highly variable. The biggest driver of that growth has been Springwood, as you can see in the graphic. Some years it's been overall for the whole Gawler East relatively limited, and other years it's been far busier. And I suspect a lot of that would be linked back to government initiatives in terms of first home buyer grants and other things. It seems to be picking up fairly significantly at the moment. But back in 2017, 18, 19, it was relatively limited. So whilst back in 2010 or thereabouts, there were talks of Gawler East being developed in 11 years. Well, we're now in 2023, and we've probably got another 10 plus years before it's finished. So timelines change. That's just the reality of development. I should also say with the commercial development, which is in Springwood, it's been something in the order of $10 million of investment, which is to the credit of the developers at Springwood, which is a much needed local community need. Regarding the separate rate, Section 154, I should say, of the Local Government Act provides the head of power for that to be applied, and effectively there is a charge which is levied across the land within Gawler East, both within Springwood but also across other land. At the moment, effectively, council charges that to Springwood and to what we call other future developers, or OFD. We don't charge that to the Commissioner of Highways because they're exempt. But if and when they sell that land to the private sector, they will be also charged. And effectively, whilst there is a rate that's charged, it's basically rebated. So there's no actual charge each year to the developer unless they actually develop their land. So when those lots are cleared, then there's a charge payable on a per hectare basis. Indexation occurs annually, as you're familiar with. If you're trying to deconstruct the separate rate, there are effectively three parts to it. There is the contribution council takes, which is a forward payment to the Department of Transport, to the Minister, and that is for the Eastern Link Road. And that was developed through a deed at the time, the Gawler East Link Road deed, and there was a governance deed as well. There is also a separate deed, which is the Traffic Interventions Community Infrastructure deed. I won't test your memory on remembering all that. The TICI deed, we call it. And that deals with two other interventions. One is traffic related, local traffic interventions, that is, so junction improvements, roundabouts and the like. And there's also community infrastructure. So it's those three components that equal, if you like, the separate rate. Moving forward. So at the moment for 2023-24, the total separate rate for Springwood and OFD, or other future developers, is in the order of $23 million. As I said, that doesn't include the Commissioner of Highways land. And you can see how that's constructed in terms of the amount, which is the Eastern Link Road, which is the top figure. And then there's the rest. Traffic interventions, community infrastructure. So the community infrastructure is about 5.1 mil, roughly. Traffic interventions locally is 7.8. And as Springwood or Wellco have mentioned, as they cleared various stages, they make payments into a fund that council collects. Talked about the deeds in passing, but I'll just mention them again. So there was the Geller deed, or the Eastern Link Road deed. There's the project governance deed and the TICI or TICI deed. Basically, what we're saying in the agenda report is we need to just keep an eye on and to monitor and upgrade some of the data that's in some of the deeds, specifically the TICI deed, to make sure that the interventions we deliver in regards to traffic and in regards to community infrastructure are responsive to the stages of development that occur within Springwood as the largest development in Gawler East, and can be appropriately spreadsheeted, if you like, in terms of council's 10-year long-term financial plan, because council in various interventions has a financial contribution to make. We've talked about this before, but effectively council's contribution is 1.03 million on social community infrastructure as per the current indexing. And in regards to traffic interventions, it's about 9 million out of the 20 or so million. But as we'll talk about probably later, there's a lot of interventions there which you could argue are generally capital works, which we may or may not wish to have inside a deed, upgrading various roads which have no contribution from other parties. Yes, council has a role in terms of delivering them, but that's almost business as usual. So whether that's part of a deed or not, something we'll work our way through. In terms of planned capital works for 23-24, there are 4 traffic interventions we are proposing. And you've seen in the budget, there's allocation set aside for this. Effectively, it's about $400,000 from council for 23-24, and the balance is about $450,000 for 24-25 when we get to budget setting for next financial year. You'll see that our contributions vary from 13% on item 1E through to figures of 12 and 13%. So on or around 10 to 12% generally. There are other figures there. Springwood, SW, it's a larger figure on some items and it's a lower figure on others. And that's based on projections we did back in 2018, where we had Tonkin doing various modelling.
Sorry, what were those other acronyms? The
So
COH and the
Town of
RP?
Gawler is TOG, of course. SW is Springwood. COH is Commissioner of Highways, and OFD is other future developers. So we're talking about One Tree Hill and some of those areas down there. As planners, we love acronyms. In regards to community infrastructure, which we touched on a little bit with a quarry, because realistically, this is where you would deliver it. And that's also consistent with the Springwood Master Plan. There is a oval, if you like, which is 3 hectares. That's the AFL oval. And that would cost something in the order of 1.6 million. I've said the provider being council because the current deeds don't specify who is the deliverer, but given that it's something council will be coordinating on behalf of its community, it would be logical that it's council. And it would take contributions from Springwood and from Welco and from others, and it would coordinate with all parties to ensure there's a timing on that. One of the challenges that you can see in here is to do with population numbers and the absence, I guess, of a timeline. One of the things that the issues or challenges that occurs when you progressively reduce the lot yield by having regard to market trend and topography is that when you end up delivering probably less than 3,000 lots, 2,600, 2,700 lots, that you don't get to 10,000 people. So you don't technically trigger off the community hub or the multi-use courts, which I would argue probably isn't where we want to be. So what we're suggesting is we'll revise and update some of the trigger points, bearing in mind that the communities move into these areas expecting these facilities, and there's nothing to say these facilities are inappropriate. We just need to tweak and refine some of the trigger points so that we have clearer timing on when they get delivered. I've also come up with a little bit of a spreadsheet as to actions we'll be working our way through in the coming months. So one is a perpetual ongoing issue, which is ensuring deeds remain relevant, targeted, equitable, unambiguous and effective. That doesn't apply just to Gawler East, that applies everywhere. And that's generally good planning practice. There's also the commissioning of the review of lot yields, which we've done. Remodeling non-conventional community infrastructure needs. So at the moment, we've been going through the trigger points for community asset delivery. And I'll be sitting down with Bryce Norton and others from within council, looking at some of those needs in a bit more detail. And then we'll sit down with Springwood, with Welco and with other communities to work out whether over the last 6 to 8 years, some of those needs may have changed, whether they want 1,000 square metre hub or whether they want something else. And I think these are live and ongoing issues to make sure we're responsive to community needs. Beyond that, we've need to then, once we've agreed on what those priorities are, recost those things. Back in the day when we did the decided to cost for 1,000 square metre hub, it was historically 1,500 square metres. Now it's 1,000. Is that the right number? Obviously, there's other suggestions. It could be smaller, it could be larger. It really depends on the need for community and meeting spaces and other things which communities require. And on the horizon, we've also got Concordia being developed as well, which is around the corner. And they will have also assets of their own. And we're doing our own work, as you know, on 2046 growth framework, and nothing in Gawler is more than 10 minutes away. So there's broader questions about how we deliver and what's acceptable in terms of drive time, walkability, and the need for assets. And then we'll reapportion and possibly do an addendum to deeds that we've got and provide a very compelling story for Welco to say, yes, we'll agree to this and we'll sign it. So I think that pretty much brings me to an end, and I've probably gone through this really fast, but I thought that was the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Andrew? No, you can go back to your regular spot. So the motion here, we can just scroll so it's on the screen there. So we're noting the report and that a further report be provided essentially. May you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for the presentation by Welco and also Andrew. I think it's a good refresher on separate rates and community infrastructure and and the changing needs of Gawler East. I think it's good to update those figures, and I look forward to a further report to this committee on on Gawler East. Thank you.
Councillor Sample, you wish to speak? You second the motion. Any other speakers? If not, I can put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. All right. And so, all right, so now we're going to have another presentation from Alinea Group. I think that might be how you pronounce that. Come on up. And just turn on the microphone. Press the button on the microphone. There you go.
Hi, I'm David Snoswell from Alinea Group. We've just completed the draft of the retail and commercial demand assessment for the Gawler Town Centre. So I'm just going to run through quickly what we did and what the results were. I don't know how well that comes up. My eyesight is really poor, so I can't read it, but hopefully you can. We'll just go through the retail demand analysis that we did. Look at the spending analysis for the town centre over the period between 21 and 2046, based on the growth that we're expecting because of the population growth. And from there, look at what that might mean, what the parking implications are as a result of the potential growth in retail and commercial land uses within the town centre. Then conclusions and next steps. First thing we did was look at the primary and secondary trade areas for the Gawler Town Centre. Essentially, the primary trade area was determined to be essentially the Gawler urban area, if you like, which is the all of Gawler LGA, as well as the urban areas outside of the LGA to the north and east, and the growth areas of Concordia and Roseworthy. The secondary trade area was essentially the balance of the Barossa and Light council areas. It isn't an exact science, and I'll probably say that a number of times, so I don't want people to get too hung up on where the lines are drawn. But it tends to make sense that most of your trade will come from residents that live close to the town centre. People that live further away will come on a less frequent basis, and then you'll always get some from beyond those areas, because you'll have workers or visitors to the area that also spend in the town area, in the town centre. Okay, we looked at the population growth for both the primary and secondary trade area between 2021 and 46. This was a little problematic because the official forecast by the state government haven't been updated since the 2021 census. So this is an estimate based on both council's advice and forecasts that we do know are out of date, but then also taking into account recent trends in population growth and the new building approvals for housing in the area. Over the next 10 years, much of the growth in the primary trade area we're expecting will be within the Gawler LGA. That's probably going to be for the next 15 years, actually. After then, we think that the land within Gawler LGA may start to run out, and then the growth will start moving into areas outside of Gawler LGA, but areas that are will still depend on the Gawler town centre for retail and commercial. Just wanted to show this map here that is from the land supply report that's done by the state government. And it shows the Gawler area as one of 3 development fronts in the outer north, together with Playford, Virginia, 2 Wells. And then also from the same report, looking at where in each of those development fronts the greenfield land supply is and at what stage of development it's at. The light green, apologies for not putting the legend on this graph here, but the light green is development ready land. The dark green is zoned but not development ready, and the purple is unzoned but identified as residential, future residential land. This was as at 2020, so it may well have changed somewhat since then in terms of the proportions, but overall it provides where the Gawler growth is coming from, and you can see Concordia is going to dominate that growth in the longer term. Now this is a PDF, so do you know how to control it so that it does it page by page, or? Right, okay, that's good. After looking at the population, we looked at the spending in the Gawler town centre in each of the primary trade area and the secondary trade area. We looked at total available spending, which was forecast to grow from 876 million to 1.77 billion. And then we looked at what proportion of that spending is likely to flow to the Gawler town centre. And you can see that the assumption is that most of the spending within Gawler town centre will be from the primary trade area, with a much smaller proportion coming from the secondary and around 10% coming from beyond. We also took into account that over this time period, more competition is going to come online within the catchment. So Concordia, growth at Gawler East, growth at Gawler Park and Gawler Green, as well as potentially at Roseworthy as well. So in terms of Gawler Town Centre's ability to retain that market share of total spending over the journey is going to be somewhat at risk because of future competition. So that's something that we need to try to mitigate against over time. Yeah, just highlighting again that this isn't an exact science, and there are a lot of assumptions and various scenarios that we could look at. And so I thought it was important to just point out some of the assumptions made, the risks, and what those opportunities are. And so I've just highlighted a couple of these here. I think one of the, as I mentioned, the risks are the future competition. The other risk is that Gawler Town Centre can't easily find a large development site to fit, say, a Kmart into the town centre, if that was something that Kmart were looking to do to service this area. it would be much easier in an open greenfield location. So that's a risk that maybe you lose some of these anchor retailers to other locations because you just can't fit them into the town centre. And of course, the cost of providing a car park in an existing town centre, when you do need to go to multi-storey, can be quite expensive compared to an area that has an abundance of land. But one thing that the town centre offers that a new greenfield location may not offer is that existing amenity and the history and that provides a better amenity for nighttime economy. And it's an area that we hope more and more people will be driven to come to. And I think it also is probably a reason for people to consider moving to the Gawler region is because of the history of and the fact that you do have a main street that is interesting and attractive. There's also that opportunity as the catchment grows that it reaches that market threshold or where a whole lot of new retailers and national chain retailers will consider Gawler as an option to service what is now a 100,000 person catchment rather than a 50 or 60,000 catchment. And so that provides an opportunity for it to become a truly regional centre, similar to perhaps Manapara or Elizabeth in terms of the scale, not in terms of what it looks like. We looked at the supportable floor area for the Gawler of the future. And this analysis is what I would call a reasonably aspirational analysis of potential for growth. There was considered to be an oversupply of retail floor space. Apparently, you could argue that some of the vacant floor space that is available, that is in the town centre, is not actually available, that the landlords are not actively marketing it. It's perhaps in the wrong part of the town centre to truly be targeted by retailers that want to be in the town centre. But we arrived at a figure of around 16,000 square metres of additional retail floor space. And the question would be, where do you fit an extra 16,000 square metres into the town centre? What does that mean? What it does mean, though, is that we do see significant opportunities for and significantly more spending within the town centre in the next over the next 25 years. We also looked at beyond retail floor space, what other uses might be attracted to the town centre. To do this, I looked at a number of other town centres just to look at what the makeup of those uses were compared to Gawler. And one thing that stood out as a centre grows is that it becomes more diversified and less reliant on retail as the major use within the town centre. And so we would expect that over the next 25 years that Gawler should have less reliance on the retail type floor spaces and would grow its office space and health and other services as a proportion of the total employment within the town centre. So that would also be an element of Gawler's growth. So this just summarises what we see as the potential mix in 2046 in terms of floor area, and then what that means in terms of employment. And so we would expect that by 2046 that the town centre would employ over 3,000 people, which is larger than, for instance, the Salisbury Town Centre is currently, but significantly less than centres like Modbury. Finally, we looked at the car parking implications related to this growth over the next 25 or so years. This is not suggesting that that there needs to be an extra 1,977 car parks in the Gawler Town Centre, suggesting that the growth in land uses and floor space would generate demand for an extra 1977 spaces. But from what we've seen from work that the council has done is there's an oversupply at the moment of car parking in the town centre. The recent surveys that have been undertaken suggest that most of the car parking areas are around 50 to 60% occupied at peak times rather than 100%. So there is opportunity for some growth in floor space before you get to a need for further car parking. But what is likely to happen is that at some stage in the next 15 or so years, there will be demand for additional car parking if these growth assumptions occur. And that's where the opportunity for a multi-deck car park needs to be considered now as a means to future-proof the town centre and not have a situation where you're missing out on development and investment because of a lack of parking within the town centre. So conclusions and next steps. We've suggested that by 2036, there'll be a need for some additional car parking, and the most appropriate way of providing that would be in a multi-deck arrangement. And that would be with a multi-deck car park that would provide that retail amenity at ground floor level. The next steps in terms of the project that we're currently working on, what we've done to date is part A of a 3-part project. Part B is priority property and delivery options across 6 sites that have been identified by council in the Gawler Town Centre. I believe those sites are shown in the report that is on the agenda. Yes. Yeah. And then part C, the concept plan and costings for multi-deck car parking options. So we're just starting now on part B. So that's the end of the presentation.
All right, thanks for the presentation. It was a very interesting report. Questions, Councillor Kosh?
Through the chair, I'm just looking on page 50 of 162, which is the attachments that we've got, and it's got Appendix A, market trends in retailing, and it goes through a whole range of things: online shopping, social media marketing influencers, experiential retail, etc., etc. What do you think will those influences be on Gawler? Because at one stage you're talking about trying to encourage a national brand, but then in Appendix A, you're almost talking something completely different. Can you just give us a bit of a balance on that?
I don't think the two are exclusive of one another. As a centre grows, some of the major retailers that we all are familiar with will look to service areas that they see as being underserviced at the moment. So with Gawler growing from its catchment growing from around that 50 to 60,000 to potentially 100,000, there will be additional or further interest from some well-known specialty retailers looking to come into Gawler. At the same time, and going back to the trends that I mentioned in the appendix, there's also opportunities to for retailers that want to do something different, or for retailers that want to provide healthy options, whether it be in food or for the food provenance and for supporting the local region, and all of these things seem to be growth areas within the retail area. So I think I certainly don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that there's a growth in both. One, because of the trends that are happening in retail, and the other because of the tremendous population growth that's happening in Gawler.
So I had a question. It's page 44 of the attachments. It's talking about supporting mixed use and residential development in the town centre. And it talked about how this might require changes to zoning that encourages greater development uplift. I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts or experiences on the actual accomplishing all that, because I think one of the factors in our main street is that we do have a bunch of space that's not used because it's 100 years old and it's not up to, standard, and it takes some money to renovate it and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of space, obviously, for upstairs residential or even downstairs and, basement areas and that kind of thing. Do you have any experience with how to get that activated?
Yeah, this was a comment I think that was probably came from the planning team rather than myself. I agree with the comment, and it can be difficult we know that it can be difficult to achieve that use on upper levels, but it might be something that you might want to comment on.
Through the chair. We've foreshadowed that we'll come back to council, probably to IES, I imagine, with a bit of an update on progress with the design framework for Gawler CBD. I think it will be timely given the work that's been done on the parking strategy, the integrated transport plan, and a whole lot of other connected projects, that we have a useful conversation, a structured conversation about what are the limitations in terms of development, but also a mature conversation in terms of what we don't want. So that's fine. So there's certainly been reactions in the past to extremely, well, not, I might use the word extremely, ambitious projects for high-rise development. That's not necessarily what we're talking about at all here, but it's more a mature conversation about how you can develop what you've got and whether the controls give the right signal for that to occur.
Yeah, I just think it's definitely the use of the current street, definitely something to continue looking into. Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you, Chair. It's probably just more of a comment. Thank you, David, for your presentation. And I don't want to labour this, but I think in terms of the trade area, I think we actually have a tertiary trade area as well. And that's the number of people attracted to the range of health services that we provide in the town, particularly the specialists. And we've got, for sure, got people coming in from as far as the Yorke Peninsula. And while they're here, they are shopping because it's a lot easier to access and buy material and then take it home. So I think, as you said, they're not fixed, those numbers, but we do actually service a much larger area. And I think the point of difference for me is that we do in the Gawler Town Centre have a situation of strip shopping rather than a mall experience, where people want to promenade and meet other people, hence that we've got a range of cafes, pubs and other meeting spots. So I look forward to the discussion that you've just had, Chair, with the planning, because returning to what we used to have with people living above and below the shops is exactly where we need to start to focus. So I look forward with interest to seeing that happen. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Chair, through you.
on page 30, you've made a comment about Adelaide's food bowl, and it should be well placed to showcase the region's food and wine. This is a feature of dining in the Barossa Valley. Why not bring some of this high quality produce and wine into Gawler's town centre? So can you expand on that? I think the main street really lends itself to a higher quality of a dining experience, but also food and wine. So would you like to expand on your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that the Barossa has done extremely well with its the quality of food that it matches with its wines. And I get that the Barossa has a strong tourism focus that perhaps helps to support that, but it also gets a lot of its business from the Barossa community as well. I think with the growth in Gawler, you will get a more aspirational base of residents that will be demanding a higher quality food offering. I'm sure there's plenty of people from Gawler that have been regular patrons at restaurants in the Barossa or restaurants in other parts of metropolitan Adelaide that would love that level or quality being local and would support it. It's a matter of, I think the difficulty is getting that first one off the ground. I think that, and I know that the council planning staff are certainly keen to see the level of traffic in Murray Street calmed somewhat or reduced somewhat, and that would, I think, would open up the opportunities for a much better alfresco dining experience along Murray Street. And there's some beautiful old buildings that just lend themselves to a great cafe experience. I don't know if that answers the question.
Do you have examples, I guess, of a similar situation to us that's been successful? As in, because we're not just shopping precinct, we're a street with heritage sort of value and that sort of thing, that's something different to like how Manapara and Elizabeth and that are. Do you, I guess, have any examples of something to strive towards?
Well, I wish I could think of an example that was not as an Adelaide or suburban example, but Henley Beach has a couple of restaurants that have been voted as top 50 in South Australia, and that's quite recently that it has has achieved that. The Adelaide Hills is certainly has a number of really good eating establishments. I don't like always sounding as if you need to have a mini brewery or a gin distillery as part of the complex, but it does seem that there's a lot of those really strong social anchors that are coming into both rural towns and into suburban locations that are backed by these new boutique distilleries. I love the one at the Bond store at Wallaroo, for instance.
Councillor Sam.
Thank you, David, it's great to read this. You made a lot of emphasis on the point of parking, that we've already got enough. And I think this has been highlighted a number of times. in your investigation, did you look at other areas? I don't know whether I heard you say about other areas where more parking, like for instance, on the western side of Reed Street, council owns a huge area there. Well, there's a heritage house there as well, but the other one is Eric Nowick Park, or what is quite often called as Goose Island. It's exactly in the centre of the town. Did you happen to look at those at all in your investigation?
Sorry, microphone on. Yeah.
The Reed Street car park was on council's list of 6 sites. No, we didn't look in detail at other sites beyond council's work, because council's work on the car park sites was quite comprehensive. But in saying that, there was the 6 sites that council had identified, but the reports, the earlier reports that council had done did consider other sites like Goose Island, and from my understanding, I think it was even opened up at one stage for parking, and we seem to be a really lazy lot, you know. Yeah, I agree with you, it's very close to the centre of the city, but it seems to be too far for most people to consider using it. I think one of the things, and this is perhaps not really answering your question, but some of those sites that aren't quite central, we need to get the people that are parking all day, the workers that are parking all day, to use those car parks, so that the convenient car parks are retained for customers. It seems so obvious.
Because there's definitely car parks that are much less used than others. I think in the diagrams you had at the Phoenix Plaza car parks were consistently, 20% or in that sort of range. Is that something that you think is something that we could resolve with, just good directions or good shops in the area, or like is that just something that is just it's just not a good area for parking, or any thoughts?
I think one of the comments that I do make in the paper was that the centre of activity for retailing is really the area north of Colton Street, or even further north than that, probably from Todd Street and above. And so locations like Phoenix Plaza would struggle in terms of retailing because they're so far away from the centre of activity. I don't recall the length of the main street now, but I did measure it, and it's something like 3 or 4 times as long as Rundle Mall. So it's a very, very large retail strip, and it's going to, I think, always be difficult to have that whole strip activated with retail users. So perhaps that's when you start looking at other users that might activate other parts of the town centre.
Are there any other questions? If not, thank you for the presentation. And we'll move on to the agenda item. So we're noting these reports. Mayor, happy to move. Do you wish to speak?
Firstly, David, thank you for your comprehensive presentation, but also answering some questions without notice, which is really quite useful for us all. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. I think your your study is really quite comprehensive. It has some really good information in there, and it gives us a long-term view of where we need to go. And I really liked your comment just before about having, you know, the Murray Street is how much? 3 times as long as Rundle Mall. And I think that's a really important concept. And so looking at the different functions of the different parts of the main street and where activity needs to be is probably a useful thing to do when we do the what are we doing, Andrew? We're doing the town design.
The 2046.
No,
No.
the town centre design.
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct. So what we foreshadowed was coming back with a health check on what's been achieved in terms of the 2016 design framework. And maybe I'm suggesting to council that we look a bit more strategically at whether there are key development sites, turn a bit more of a structure plan. Yeah.
So thank you, Andrew. I think it's good to think strategically. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to just think about today. We're here to think about in 20 years' time and 30 years' time. And so I think I'm looking forward to some of this work that's going to be coming online, and we'll be a part of it, and we'll be able to have a say and on behalf of our community. So I think thank you, David, for all your hard work, and staff, of course, Chris, who's sitting right next to him. And I'm sure you provided lots of good ideas. But yeah, I always think of Prospect Road because they looked at one aspect of Prospect. They didn't do the whole street. They didn't do the whole road. They did one aspect of it, and it's actually been a resounding success. So they focused on one aspect, and I think maybe that's what we need to do. So yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hennessy, wish to speak? A second, is there any other discussion? If not, happy to put the motion. All those in favour, carried unanimously. That brings us to 7.3. The car parking strategy update. No presentation this time. So yeah, this is the update. Would someone like to move it? Councillor Hennessy, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for this report, and I'm really impressed that we're doing some innovative investigations. As we've said in the previous report, we've obviously got a situation, I think we all know it, where we have got car parks, but people are just unaware of them or unwilling to use, especially the longer term car parking we have. So any way we can assist residents to understand what's available and where, I think is worthwhile. And I also quite like the use of some of the new technologies to help our staff be as effective and efficient in their roles as they can be. So I'm happy to move the motion.
Councillor Hughes, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. My parents had a business on the Norwood Parade for a very long time, and yeah, we probably on the parade still go out there probably fortnightly, and there is not a very big car park, but the signage and the inflow in and out of that car park is just so well controlled, and there's not a lot of car parks. And yeah, when my parents had their business, they made sure staff, they were many kilometres away from the main street. It's always been an issue, the Norwood Parade, for parking, and I think it works really well. And just if you use the car park for a couple of hours, it's free, and it's amazing how many cars go in and out of that car park, and how well that operates. It's just amazing. But yeah, happy to support this trial because I think it's a good way forward.
And Councillor White.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've just to echo councillor Hennessy and councillor Hughes's words. I think some of the innovative approaches are really beneficial. Thinking of suburbs like Norwood, Henley Beach, Glenelg, where car parks are a struggle to find, but with some good technology, I think this is something we could apply to Gawler. I did just have a question, and happy for it to be taken on notice. In the report, it mentions that there were discussions with the owners of Phoenix Plaza, as well as the owners of the land at 47 to 55 Murray Street. I'm just wondering what the outcomes of that meeting were, if there was any.
And so 47 to 55, that's the row of empty shops? Yes. Everyone's looking at each other. There you go.
I always defer to the CEO. Yes, we have been talking with the owners of the Phoenix Plaza, plus the car park deck that belongs to it, plus the shop fronts on Murray Street, all in the same ownership. Yes, we'd be nice to be able to tell you exactly what day a DA is going to be lodged for the redevelopment. And if I knew the number, I'd tell you, but I don't. Jack and myself and David Bilatovich met with the developer about a month or two ago, Jack? 2 months? We were told it'll be July. We're now in August. I don't want to push the friendship too much by demanding that he lodges. It's ultimately up to him to work that out, but there's genuine interest and commitment to developing that land. And I think it's just a question of him being able to sit down with his architect and finalise the drawings. So I know he's gone through a couple of different versions of it, but I think it will clearly see activation of the street and will be a significant improvement on what's currently there.
Yeah. See a question. Oh, you got okay. Follow-up question, then we'll get to everyone else.
Thanks, Chair. Just a follow-up question in regards to the Phoenix Plaza car park. Have the owners of the car park ever expressed any interest in extending hours or making that car park more of a public asset? I know I probably know the answer to this, but yeah, I'll try my luck.
Through the chair, the answer to that is that there'd be an integrated solution that links what happens on Main Street with the plaza at the rear plus the car park deck. They're all part of a package deal.
Councillor Lorna?
Thank you for that. Understand the sentiments around the technology, what we're actually trying to do there. I do have concerns with basically the auto fining of people, which is pretty much what that is saying. We're going into a trial period. So through the chair, I'd like to ask a question, what that trial period is going to contain, what it actually is, and are we fining people through that trial period?
Through the chair, the license plate recognition program will be probably about a 3 to 6 month trial. We just want to investigate how we operate in terms of our traditional way of doing it, which is a guy walking the beat and chalking and marking and taking photos. This sort of automates the whole process. It also broadens the scope of the area which he covers. So for us, it's just an opportunity to see how it works for us. There are a number of councils in South Australia and the rest of the country that are using it and are finding it that it takes a lot of issues out of hands for work health safety and all those things that our staff often get exposed to and have been exposed to in the past when they're out there issuing expiation notices. It's an extension of the current system we use. It's the same company that provides us what we currently have, which is the Pinforce database. So it's merely a newer version of what that is, and it sort of expedites the process and allows us to cover a larger area in a smaller amount of time.
And this is a tried and true sort of process and not something we're trialing on the cutting edge of technology.
Through the chair, it's an app that works, yes. But what I should also say in response to Councillor Lorna's question is that, which I can see you, before we did any trial of the nature proposed, we would do a communication campaign to educate the residents and users of the main street and so forth as to what is coming in and how it will work. So it's not like we would apply automatic new system in place and start issuing fines here, there and everywhere without at least educating the community as to how the trial would work. and to see that it's used in an effective way.
Councillor Koch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Look, I'm happy to support this. I've seen some technology around this in other parts of, well, actually when I was in New Zealand when I was in New Zealand, and I actually spoke to some of the officers there, because you do. And anyway, and they said how more efficient they were in their time, the use of time, and they were saving money, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a good idea to trial and just see how we go.
Councillor Sample.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've got to say, here we go again on page 51 about RV parking. Now, I've been down there. I mean, Councillor White has really worked his butt off to put this forward so we get it going tomorrow, not 12 months' time. This is when everybody's travelling. My wife and I went for a trip around the mid-north on the weekend, and every RV park, especially the one that really opens your eyes, is a little place called Blythe in the middle of nowhere. And if you haven't been there, go there because it's a real attraction. The RV park had 52 vehicles in there. Must be a lot of wealthy people up that way, but that's fantastic. What I can't understand, and maybe if it's through you to Jack, is that all these things here improve the lighting for better security. RV friendly people have got their own lights and that. I think we should bring one in some night to Councillor White, bring him in to show them what an RV is like. Surfacing the parking lot. They don't want surface in the parking lot. That's going to cost a fortune. Footpath upgrades and improved lighting. What for? The RVs don't want that. And introducing clear line markings to tell them where to park. I just don't know why it is when this has been put up so many times, it's already been indicated that council owns the land. I've been down there. I went down there again today. And the posts are there. So I don't know why we've got to rip them posts out and put new posts in. Please give this a trial, but start it off from the 1st of September.
Any other discussion? If not, would the mover happy to, yep, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Brings us to 7.4, the results of the Clonley Skate Park consultation. May I wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for the consultation summary report. It was quite informative. Originally, when we put up the skate park, there were lights, but that was knocked back. So I think this is worthy of putting up another opportunity to get lights and extend the time. So I think that, and I really like the police, Rob Moday has been mentioned in this report as well, and they're quite supportive of the initiative. So I hope everyone supports this because I think it's a really good thing for young people, and Clonley is one of our premier parks, and it's really, really well used. And I'd like that to continue.
A seconder. Councillor Lorna, do you wish to speak? Any other discussion? Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, I echo the words of the Mayor, but I am pleased to see that we're going into a consultation process because I think there are some elements that are outlined in this report which will help somewhat for nearby residents who may be concerned. One of the things that jumped out at me was the fact that the lights are going to be sensor lights, so they will only come on when there are people in the vicinity. So 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, hopefully they won't be on, and if they are, maybe they should be on so we can see what's happening in that area, or the police can at least. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that consultation process and perhaps being a part of it because I was here and I do remember the concerns when the park was first mooted, the skate park was first mooted. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll just say that it's really good to see the results. the consultation reached the young people who are clearly very enthusiastic about the space that they're using, which is not always a demographic that gets captured in our community consultations. So, yeah, if there's no one else, Mayor, are you happy for us to move the motion? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. So we have one information report, Climate Emergency Action Plan. And I think we've got Tim back there in case we've got any questions. Do we have a mover? Councillor Sample, you should speak.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. A fantastic report, and I think we all know if we switch our televisions on that certainly something's happening to do with the climate when you look at what's happening all over the world, and not only that inside our state of Australia, South Australia and Australia. And what's been put together here is very comprehensive, very easy to read, especially for me. And it's terrific, and I congratulate Mr. Kelly on this report and was proud to move it.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor White, wish to speak? No? Mayor?
Once again, we have a fantastic report from Mr. Tim Kelly. I had a meeting with both Tim and the CEO with the ACCC, trying to get them to advocate for legislative change. And we'll continue that fight, Tim. It is important that the playing field is fair. It's currently not fair. And we will continue that fight. Whoever we need to talk to, we will talk to. It is a difficult space, and it is hard to get people to hear, but we were told by the ACCC that they are not unsympathetic to our cause. They understand completely what we're talking about, and I am sure that they will advocate as best they can. We need to continue that advocacy. This report gives us a real understanding of all the elements of the CEEP, which I thank you for, Tim, just highlighting all the things that Gawler is doing, and I think we're leading the state. And we're also very well known across the nation as a really good advocate for climate change. So I think we're doing really, really well with the help of staff, of course. And I think that won't stop as we go through. And this CEEP will help us deliver not only for our local community, but from an advocacy point of view, we can lead across the nation, even our little community of Gawler. It doesn't matter how small or big you are, it depends on how determined you are. So I'm really, really passionate about climate change, and I know many young people are, because they're the future of our community, and I think that we owe it to them to do the right thing.
Any other discussion? If not, I can put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Items listed for discussion and items listed for discussion at future meetings. No one has anything. We'll move on to questions without notice. There's none. We'll move on to motions without notice. And if there's none, we'll move on to closing the meeting at 8:43. Bang the official gavel to close the meeting.